And Elisa is a Salinas High School teacher and a survivor. Thank you, ladies.
Good evening. I'm a local victim advocate with the Providence Intervention Center for Assault and Abuse. We also have a child advocacy center called Dawson's Place in Everett. When people ask what a night in the life of a victim advocate looks like, they often picture courtrooms, legal interviews, and scheduled appointments. But none of my nights begin that way. They begin with a page and a phone call. It might be close to midnight, a hospital is called, an officer found a child in a local hotel. Medics are transporting her to the emergency department. Detectives suspect trafficking and are requesting a forensic interview. And so I go, I tell my family goodbye and that I love them, knowing it's going to be a late night. And I also know that when I return home, when the house is quiet and everyone is asleep, I will carry with me a deep sadness, a sick feeling in my stomach, a heavy heart. Sometimes it feels almost selfish because I get to come home to safety and warmth when a child has just stepped into a reality that will shape their life forever. So I walk into the emergency room and I head to the patient's room where officers and detectives wait. Strangers surround her. A nurse eagerly awaits to give report on the patient. The hallway is bright. The environment is clinical and chaotic. The atmosphere is heavy. And in the center of all of it is a child. Sometimes she won't look at anyone. Sometimes she's angry. Sometimes she insists she chose this. Sometimes she is terrified someone is coming through the door. My first words are almost always the same. My name is Kendra. I'm here for you. Not for the system, not for the reports, not for the case number, for you. I help slow the room. I listen to the nurse's report. I coordinate with the officers, and then I turn my attention where it belongs, to her. I explain what's happening in language she can understand. I explain that we may take pictures and collect evidence, but emphasize that she is in complete control. I make sure she knows she has rights. I ask when she has slept, when she has last ate, if she needs a warm blanket, something small and human in a moment that feels anything but that. And then I tell her what she may never have heard before, that it is not your fault, and that she has done nothing wrong. Because trafficking steals control, it distorts love, it weaponizes trust, it convinces children they are complicit in their own exploitation. So advocacy restores truth in inches. So I asked, do you want something to drink? Would you like me to stay in the room with you? Is it okay if we talk about what happens next? Sometimes I sit quietly during a forensic exam. Sometimes I remain beside her throughout the hours of waiting. Sometimes I help arrange emergency placement because home is not safe. Sometimes I'm introducing new strangers or delivering difficult news. Sometimes I gently explain that the person who said they loved her was manipulating her. And sometimes I simply sit in silence with a pit in my stomach while shame and fear fill the space. There are nights when a child defends the very person who exploited her. Nights when she believes she is to blame. Nights when the weight of trauma feels heavier than hope. Nights when I am consumed with anger and frustration. But there are also moments that take my breath away. I am often asked, how do I do this job? She is why. Every single victim is why. A whisper, it wasn't my fault, was it? And I get to look her in the eyes and say again, no, it never was. A brave decision to speak, a forensic interview, a first therapy appointment, a first night of sleep. Advocacy is steady, it is consistent, it is showing up again until trust feels possible. And here's what I want you to understand tonight. When I walk into those hospital rooms, I'm not just seeing a patient, I am seeing a child who was groomed, a child who was manipulated, a child who was told no one would believe her, a child who was convinced this was all she was ever worth, a child who may have friends she still loves, still missing, or stuck in this horrendous lifestyle, too afraid to get help. The horror she carries are beyond anything any of us could ever imagine. beside her reminded her it is not her fault, I am reminded of a powerful truth. She is not alone. Tonight you are going to hear from someone who once sat in that very position, someone who once felt that fear, someone who once believed the lies. Before she begins, I want you to understand something profound. When I say I stand beside these girls, I mean it with everything in me. Thank you for this opportunity tonight. Thank you for being here to raise money for a very important cause tonight. Because without these programs, victims are far less likely to be saved. They are often lost and forgotten. The voice you're about to hear is not just a survivor, she is also a friend of mine. She is courage, she is resilience. She is living proof that exploitation does not get the final word. And with extraordinary bravery, she is about to tell you her truth. Her story begins with 4 powerful words: I was that girl. And this is Eliza.
First of all, I want to say thank you to everyone in this room for caring about this cause. Admittedly, I feel a little bit out of my comfort zone. This is such a fancy event. I'm much more of a jeans and sneakers kind of girl, so I feel a little bit like a Hugo in an Indy 500 race. But thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my story. Before I start, I want to take a moment to thank Kendra. I had the joy of being her 5th grade Sunday school teacher a long time ago. I also had the privilege of being her youth pastor. Sweet girl. I am so proud of the woman you are becoming, of the woman of God you are continuing to grow to be, the wife, the mother, the teacher, the advocate that you are. I'm so honored to work alongside of you at Snohomish High School. I'm so proud of you. One of my favorite quotes and one of my life's mottos is from a missionary from the early 1900s. His name was C.T. Studd, who was a missionary to China. He said, "Some want to live within the sound of church or chapel bells. I want to run a rescue shop an inch from hell." That, my friends, is what we are doing here tonight. Each one of y'all in your own way is helping to create that rescue shop. By being willing to help fund the battle, all y'all are running to the battle and not running away. Perhaps I'm not objective when it comes to this issue. I believe that sex trafficking, this form of slavery, is one of the most repulsive and evil things on our planet. And yes, I was that little girl that Kendra talked about. I am the eldest of 6 kids trafficked by our stepdad and our mother along with their cohorts. I can remember us having to service anywhere from 4 to 10 men in one night. I was often forced to watch my siblings in repulsive sex acts with other people. And if a customer was unhappy or unsatisfied, that was my fault. And they would force me to keep all of us performing appropriately by threatening to kill one of my siblings if we didn't do it right. It truly was emotional, physical, sexual abuse and torture. But I don't want to focus on that. Yes, it was awful. And yes, it was painful. And it took years of therapy, but I've got a good one if you want a number. But I want to focus on gratitude. I want to focus on why I'm grateful for organizations like Love146, grateful to people like Giselle, thank you for this night. Why I'm grateful for people like all of y'all who are not afraid to run into the battle. People not afraid to fund the battle, because it's a very expensive one. It is people like y'all that run a rescue shop an inch from hell. People like y'all that rescued me out of my hell. Thank you. Normal, loving, caring people. I want to share 2 stories of such people. When you live in this kind of abuse, there is an ugly stench that follows you. And I was that kid that showed up to school dirty and stinky. I would often be teased about smelling like a rotten fish. but I had this teacher. You know, I don't remember her name, but I remember her. I remember her face, her gentle eyes, her contagious laugh and smile, her kind and loving voice. I remember her. It was a typical school day when she let the class out for recess, but asked me to stay for a moment. I was panicked because only bad kids ever had to stay in from recess. I was not that kid. I look at some of you and maybe you were that kid that had to stay in from recess. I wasn't. I stood there with my head hung in shame. When everyone was gone, she said, "Sweet thing, let's head to the ladies' room and have some girl talk." And I knew from the tone in her voice that I was not in trouble at all. I was excited to follow her because the thought of getting some sort of special attention was really all the carrot I needed. Once we were in the restroom, she grabbed some paper towels, got them wet and soapy, and to my surprise, she began washing my face. As clear as day, I can still hear her say, "Sweet thing, I'm going to teach you how to wash your face and tidy yourself up. That way you can be clean and dignified. I want you to love yourself and be a proper little girl. How about this? You meet me here every morning, show me that you care about your outsides looking dignified, and you let me and Jesus take care of that little heart. Does that sound like a good plan?" Man, I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. You can be sure that I met her every day. And just like she said she would, she met me every morning with her makeup bag and a matching bag for me. We'd go inside and she'd pull out her makeup and begin her application process. I'd pull out the shampoo and face wash and deodorant and toothpaste and the toothbrush she'd gotten me, and I'd wash my face, my ears, brush my teeth, just like she taught me. What I liked best were the conversations we would have. She would talk to me about living, about having goals, about dreams, about the future. I felt hope for the first time. When we were done and fixing to leave, I'd smile and ask, "Do I look dignified?" She'd smile back at me, "Do you feel dignified?" "Yes, ma'am." Often she'd touch my cheek and say, "Baby girl, let's go get our day." I'd follow her out, my head and shoulders held high, feeling like I could conquer the world. Oh, how I loved her. I'm so grateful for her. There is not an ounce of exaggeration in describing my childhood as a living hell. But when I look back across the spectrum of those years, I can see many adults who were placed in my world as anchor points for me. I can see His hand of protection, favor, and grace and love poured out over my life, and I'm amazed. I know I have been rescued by a loving God. Every statistic in the book was stacked against me, and I know that before the grace of God go I. And from the depths of my heart, I'm so grateful. I was 16 when exposure finally happened. It would be my last night in Livingston, Texas. I was at youth group, my absolute most favorite place to be. I loved First Baptist Church. I loved all of the people, and I especially loved my youth pastors, Miss Mary Beth and Pastor Kevin. They were, and still are, the sun and the moon to me. Youth group was the coolest place to hang out. Some of my most significant encounters with God happened in youth group related events. It was a regular youth night when a police car arrived. I remember Pastor Kevin going out and talking to the officer, and of course all of his kids were whispering about what was going on. Little did I know that my world was about to change. I remember at some point Pastor Kevin came in and got me. He told me that I was not in trouble, but that I needed to go with the officer. My whole childhood, I was always afraid of the other shoe dropping, and somehow I knew this was it. I was so afraid. I remember tears beginning to pull in my eyes. Pastor Kevin put his arm around my shoulders and said, "It's going to be okay." I didn't know how he could be so confident, but he was, and I trusted him. So I tried to be brave, but man, I was freaking out. There have been many times over the years when I was worried or stressed about something, and I would look back and remember his face and his voice saying, "It's going to be okay." But that night, I remember being gosh, they know. Somebody talked. They know. Bob, who was my stepdad. Bob's gonna kill me now. He's gonna kill the kids and make me watch. This is it. He's gonna kill me. He had threatened numerous times that if I ever told anyone about the things he made us do, that he would kill me, and I fully believed his threats. He had held a gun to my head often enough. He had forced me to watch my siblings in detestable acts with other people, while holding a knife to my throat too many times to count. He had hung me from a bridge multiple times, laughing as I screamed in terror. He had left me and my siblings in a car on a train track, yelling that it would be my fault if they died. He tortured us. I had no reason not to believe he would kill me and my siblings. The police officer was as nice as he could be. I think he could see the fear and my increasing panic. He tried talking to me as gently as possible. I remember vomiting all over myself and wetting my britches in the back of the car, too distraught to even be embarrassed. I remember he made a phone call to his wife to bring a set of clothes, and she tenderly cleaned me up as I sobbed. The officer then proceeded to take me into protective custody, where I joined my siblings. Exposure had finally happened. S-H-I-T had finally hit the fan. That's for my students. If I spell it, they won't know what I'm saying. I'm kidding. I teach high school. The next day, maybe weeks, were filled with video interviews and lots of conversations with different detectives. One of these days, I'll tell that story, but it was a whirlwind that ended in us leaving Texas. I was heartbroken. I didn't even get to say goodbye to the people I loved the most. Over the years, I would dream about going back to Texas and even ached for contact with them. But I was paralyzed by fear, rational and irrational, and that kept me from reaching out for a long time. And the truth is, I'm not the one that reached out. It was Miss Mary Beth. She found me. She always found me. It would be 27 years before I stepped foot in Livingston, Texas again. Revisited First Baptist Church and felt the embrace of Miss Mary Beth and Pastor Kevin. Man, what a breathtaking joy that was. And each time now that I go home on summer vacation, I experience more and more of the amazing grace and healing that can only come from a loving God. I experience more freedom, more gratitude, more joy, and more strength with each step. And I have not ever had to face a single memory alone, and for that I'm grateful. So tonight, as you hear my story, I want you to know that it's no longer a story of pain, although there is that in spades. It is not a story intended to garner sympathy. This is a story of the goodness of God. It is a story that in Genesis 15:20 says, "You intended to do harm, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done and saving of many lives." It is a story that embodies the truth of Isaiah 61:3, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and the garment of praise instead of the spirit of despair. It is a story that celebrates redemption. It is a story that is not over because I know that even yet my best days are still ahead. The journey of recovery is not always easy, but I know that regardless of the learning curves of life, as Proverbs 31 says, I can still smile at the future. It is the story of His faithfulness that allows me to get up every morning and run straight into the battle. And it helps when you have cute sneakers. I'm a special ed teacher, and I work with emotional behavior disorder, kids whose lives are riddled with trauma. But I can look at them and say, sweet thing, I know. I know that life can be hard. I know that it's painful, but there's hope. Hope because of Love 146. Hope because of people like y'all here listening to painful truths. Hope because of people like y'all willing to generously fund the battle. Hope because y'all are now part of the group running a rescue shop an inch from hell. Together, we will rescue thousands and hopefully hundreds of thousands of little girls and boys like me. Thank you for having me here tonight and listening to my story. Thank you so very much. I would not be standing before you here tonight without a loving God, people like all y'all, and organizations like 146. So thank you.